The night my family threw me out of the house, my father looked straight into my eyes and said something I will never forget. "You will never succeed in life, Ethan. You're simply not good enough." My mother stood behind him silently. My older brother laughed, and the door closed behind me. I stood there on the sidewalk with nothing but a small backpack and $20 in my pocket. I remember the cold wind that night. I remember the streetlight flickering above me. And I remember thinking one simple thought. One day, I will prove them wrong. My name is Ethan Miller, and I'm 27 years old. But the story I'm about to tell you started almost 10 years ago, when I was just 17. Back then, my family didn't see me as someone who could succeed. To them, I was the problem child. My older brother, Daniel, was the complete opposite. Daniel had perfect grades. He was the star athlete in high school. Teachers loved him. Neighbors praised him. And my parents, they treated him like he was destined to become something great. Meanwhile, I struggled. School was never easy for me. Not because I wasn't trying, but because my mind worked differently. While other students memorized textbooks, I was always taking things apart. Old radios, broken computers, anything mechanical. I loved understanding how things worked, but my parents didn't see it that way. To them, it just looked like I was wasting time. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" my father would often say. At dinner, the conversations were always about Daniel's achievements, his scholarships, his awards, his future. I would sit quietly at the table, feeling invisible. The only person who ever seemed to understand me was my grandmother. She used to live with us when I was younger. Grandma Eleanor was the kindest person I knew. Whenever my father criticized me, she would gently say, "Ethan just sees the world differently. That's not a weakness." But when I turned 16, Grandma moved to another state to live with my aunt. After that, things at home became even harder. My father started losing patience with me. He believed I was lazy, irresponsible, a disappointment. The truth was, I was trying to find something I was good at, and eventually I did. When I was 17, I discovered computer programming. It happened by accident. One afternoon, I found an old laptop someone had thrown away. The screen was cracked. The keyboard barely worked, but after spending 2 nights fixing it, I managed to turn it on. That laptop changed my life. I started watching free programming tutorials online. Coding fascinated me. It felt like solving puzzles. Every line of code created something new. For the first time in my life, I felt excited about learning. Within 6 months, I built my first small mobile application. It wasn't anything impressive, just a simple budgeting app, but I was proud of it. I even tried showing it to my father one evening. He barely looked at the screen. "This nonsense won't get you anywhere," he said. "You should focus on something real." Something inside me broke a little that night, but I kept going. I continued learning coding in secret. Every night after everyone went to sleep, I stayed up practicing. Eventually, I started taking small freelance jobs online, fixing websites, building simple apps. The money wasn't huge, but it was something. The first time I earned $200 from coding, I felt like I had discovered a hidden treasure. But my family didn't see it that way. To them, I was still wasting time. The real breaking point came during my final year of high school. Daniel had just been accepted into a prestigious university. My parents were celebrating. Relatives came over. Everyone was praising him. Meanwhile, I had decided something different. I didn't want to go to college immediately. Instead, I wanted to focus on building my own software projects. When I told my parents that decision, the house exploded. My father slammed his hand on the table. "You're throwing away your future." "It's not like that," I tried to explain. "I already make money from coding." "Money?" my brother interrupted with a laugh. "From those silly little websites?" My father looked furious. "You will go to college like a normal person," he said. "I want to build something first," I replied. That was the wrong thing to say, because that's when my father finally lost his patience. "If you're so confident in your little dreams," he said coldly, "then you can leave this house and try surviving on your own." At first, I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. My mother didn't say a word. My brother just shook his head. and within 20 minutes, I was packing a small backpack. When I walked out the front door, my father said the words that stayed with me for years. "You will never succeed in life." The door closed, and just like that, I was alone. That night, I slept on a park bench. The future felt terrifying, but at the same time, something inside me had changed. For the first time, I had nothing holding me back. No expectations, no comparaison, no one telling me what I couldn't do. Just me and the dream I refused to give up. And I made a promise to myself under that cold streetlight. One day, my family would see the truth. But what happened over the next 10 years was something none of us could have imagined. The first few months after I left home were the hardest period of my life. When people talk about chasing dreams, they usually skip the ugly parts. The nights when you don't know where you'll sleep. The mornings when you wake up hungry. The moments when doubt creeps into your mind and whispers that maybe everyone else was right. For me, those months were filled with all of that. At first, I stayed wherever I could, sometimes on park benches, sometimes at a cheap hostel when I had enough money. Other times, I slept in the corner of a small internet cafe that stayed open all night. The owner, Mr. Patel, eventually noticed me coming in every night with the same old laptop. At first, he didn't say anything, but one night around 3 a.m., he walked over and placed a cup of tea next to me. "You've been here every night for weeks," he said. I looked up nervously. "I'm sorry. I'll leave if it's a problem." He shook his head. "No problem. I'm just curious." "Curious about what?" "What you're doing on that laptop all night." I hesitated for a moment, learning to code. He smiled slightly. "That explains the focus." From that night on, Mr. Patel allowed me to stay there as long as I wanted. Sometimes he even let me sleep on one of the empty couches in the corner. That small act of kindness meant more than he probably realized, because during those months, I was completely alone. My family never called, not once, not even to check if I was alive. At first, that hurt a lot, but eventually, the pain turned into something else. Determination. Every day I worked harder. I spent hours improving my coding skills. I accepted every freelance job I could find online. Most of them paid almost nothing. $20 here, $50 there. But slowly, things started to change. About 8 months after leaving home, something unexpected happened. One of the small apps I built, a simple task management app, started gaining attention online. At first, it was only a few downloads, then a few hundred, then a few thousand. I remember the day I checked my email and saw a message from a small tech blog asking if they could write about my app. I couldn't believe it. For the first time, something I built was actually being noticed. Within a week, downloads jumped from a few thousand to nearly 50,000. It wasn't life-changing money yet, but it was a start. More importantly, it gave me confidence. Maybe my father had been wrong. Maybe I wasn't a failure after all. Encouraged by the success, I began working on a bigger project. This time, I wanted to create something that could actually help businesses. The idea came from something I noticed while doing freelance work. Many small companies struggled to track their operations efficiently. Their systems were outdated, complicated, slow. So I started building a new software platform, a system designed to help businesses organize tasks, manage employees, and monitor progress all in one place. It took me almost a year to complete the first version. During that time, life slowly improved. Freelance jobs paid better. My apps earned a small but steady income. Eventually, I was able to rent a tiny apartment. It wasn't much, just a small room with a mattress, a desk, and a kitchen that barely worked. But to me, it felt like a palace, because for the first time since leaving home, I had stability. Still, the journey wasn't easy. There were countless moments when things almost fell apart. Servers crashed. Clients canceled projects. Money ran dangerously low more than once. But every time things got difficult, I remembered my father's words. "You will never succeed in life." Those words became fuel. They pushed me forward. 2 years after leaving home, I officially launched my software platform. At first, very few companies showed interest. Most business owners didn't trust software built by a young, unknown developer. But eventually, One small logistics company decided to try it. Their manager sent me an email saying, "If this works the way you promise, it could save us hours every week." So I personally helped them set everything up. For the next 3 months, I worked closely with their team, fixing bugs, improving features, listening to feedback. Then one afternoon, the manager called me. "You need to come to our office," he said. My heart started racing. I thought something had gone wrong. But when I arrived, the manager shook my hand and said something that changed everything. "This system is incredible. Our productivity increased by almost 30%. And we want to keep using it." Not only that, they also recommended my software to 2 other companies. Within 6 months, my platform had 10 paying clients, then 20, then 50. The growth was slow, but steady. 3 years after leaving home, I officially registered my company. It was a small startup with only 2 employees at first, just me, and a developer I hired from an online community. But we worked like our lives depended on it, because in many ways, they did. And little by little, the company began to grow. New clients, new features, new opportunities. By the time I turned 25, our software was being used by over 200 businesses. We had a small office, a growing team, and for the first time in my life, financial security. But even then, I never contacted my family. Not because I hated them, but because I wanted something first. I wanted proof. Proof that the boy they called a failure had actually built something meaningful. And after 10 long years, that proof finally arrived, because one quiet afternoon, my phone rang, and the name on the screen was someone I never expected to hear from again, my father. When I saw my father's name on my phone screen, I thought it had to be a mistake. For 10 years, there had been nothing. No calls, no message, no birthdays, not even a simple, "Are you okay?" And now suddenly, he was calling. I stared at the screen for several seconds while the phone kept ringing on my desk. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part of me was curious. Finally, I picked up the phone. "Hello?" There was a short pause on the other end. Then I heard a voice I hadn't heard in a decade. "Ethan." My father sounded older, slower. "Yes," I replied calmly. "It's me." Another pause followed. "I wasn't sure if this was still your number." "It is." Silence filled the line again. For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Then he cleared his throat. "How have you been?" The question felt strange. After 10 years of silence, that was his opening line. "I've been doing fine," I said. "That's good," he replied quickly. "I'm glad to hear that." His voice sounded nervous. That alone surprised me. The man I remembered was always confident, strict, never unsure about anything. But this man sounded different. Then he said something that made everything clear. "Your mother and I heard something about you recently." I leaned back in my chair. "Oh?" "Yes. One of Daniel's friends mentioned your name." Daniel, my older brother. I hadn't thought about him in years. "What did he say?" I asked. "He said you started some kind of company." "I did." Another long pause. "And is it doing well?" I glanced through the glass wall of my office. Outside, several employees were working at their desks. Our company logo was displayed proudly on the wall. The business that started with a broken laptop had grown far beyond what I imagined. "Yes," I said simply. "It's doing well." My father exhaled slowly. "That's good." For the first time since the conversation started, I asked a question. "Why are you calling?" The line went quiet again. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded heavier. "We were hoping to see you." That surprised me. "Seema?" "Yes." "Why now?" There was hesitation before he answered. "Things have been difficult lately." I didn't say anything. He continued. "Daniel's business failed last year. That caught my attention. My brother had always been the successful one, the perfect son." "What happened?" I asked. "He invested in a restaurant with some partners," my father explained. "At first it looked promising, but the business collapsed." "Lost everything?" "Almost everything." I remained silent. "Me father sighed. And your mother's health hasn't been great either." For a moment, I felt a small tug of sympathy. Despite everything, they were still my parents. But the memories of that night 10 years ago remained strong. the door closing, the words he said, "You will never succeed in life." Then my father said something else. "We thought maybe you could come visit." Visit? Yes. It's been a long time. I could hear the unspoken part of that sentence. A long time since they had seen the son they once rejected. But something about the conversation still felt unfinished. Like there was another reason behind this call. Finally, I asked directly, "Is there something you want from me?" The silence that followed lasted almost 10 seconds. That silence told me everything. When my father spoke again, his voice was lower. "We just want to talk." I almost smiled. After 10 years. Now they wanted to talk, but I wasn't angry anymore. The truth was, life had moved on. The pain that once kept me awake at night had slowly faded over the years. And now, hearing my father's voice again, I mostly felt curiosity. So I made a decision. "All right," I said. "I'll visit." "Really?" he asked quickly. "Yes." There was clear relief in his voice. "Thank you, Ethan. We'll be here this weekend." Okay. After we hung up, I sat quietly in my chair for a moment. 10 years. 10 years since I had walked out of that house with a backpack. Now I was going back. But everything had changed. I wasn't the confused 17-year-old boy anymore. I was the founder of a growing software company, someone who had built something real. Later that evening, I told my assistant I would be out of the office for the weekend. Then I drove home and packed a small bag. As I placed it near the door, a strange feeling settled in my chest. Not anger, not fear, just a quiet sense of closure approaching. Because sometimes, life brings people back into your story for a reason. And after 10 years, my family had finally knocked on my door again. But what happened when I returned home was something I never expected. The drive back to my hometown felt strangely familiar. 10 years had passed, but the roads looked almost the same small gas stations, the same quiet neighborhoods, the same grocery store where my mother used to send me to buy milk when I was a teenager. As I drove through the streets, memories started returning. Some good, many painful. I remembered riding my bicycle down these roads. I remembered walking home from school, and I remembered the night I left, carrying nothing but a backpack and a broken dream. But today was different. Today I was returning as a completely different person. After 2 hours of driving, I finally reached the street where my parents' house stood. My hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. The house looked exactly the same. Same white fence, same old oak tree in the yard, same front porch where my father used to sit during summer evenings. For a moment, I just sat inside the car and looked at it. 10 years. 10 years since I had stepped through that front door. Finally, I took a deep breath and got out of the car. As I walked toward the house, the door slowly opened. My mother stood there. She looked older than I remembered. Her hair had more gray in it. Her face showed the weight of time, but it was definitely her. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan," I nodded slightly. "Hi, Mom." She stepped forward and hugged me tightly. The hug surprised me. When I was younger, my family was never very affectionate. But now she held on to me like she was afraid I might disappear again. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered. Inside the house, not much had changed. The furniture looked the same. The old family photos still hung on the walls. Except now, they seemed like pictures from another lifetime. My father was sitting at the kitchen table. When he saw me, he slowly stood up. He looked older, too. His posture wasn't as strong as I remembered. His hair had turned almost completely gray. For a few seconds, we simply looked at each other. Then he spoke. "Ethan." "Dad." The room was quiet. Finally, he walked closer. "I'm glad you came." I nodded. We sat down at the kitchen table together. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then my mother placed 3 cups of coffee in front of us. Her hands were slightly shaking. "So," my father said slowly, "you look well." "I am. I'm glad." Another pause followed. Then my mother asked softly, "Your father said you started a company." "Yes." "What kind of company?" she asked. "Software." My father raised his eyebrows slightly. "For businesses." "How big is it?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "We have about 40 employees now." My mother looked surprised. "That many?" "Yes." "And companies actually use your software?" "Hundreds of them." The room became quiet again. I could see something in my father's expression, not disbelief, something else, regret. Finally, he spoke again. Ethan, about what happened 10 years ago. Here it was, the moment I had imagined many times over the years. He sighed deeply. I shouldn't have said those things to you. I didn't reply immediately. I was angry. He continued. I thought I was pushing you toward a better future. But I was wrong. My mother wiped a tear from her eye. We didn't understand you back then, she said. You had dreams we couldn't see. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. 10 years of silence. And now they were apologizing. My father looked down at the table. I told you that you would never succeed. His voice sounded heavy, but it looks like I was very wrong. I took a slow breath. I didn't come here for an apology. He looked up. You didn't? No. Then why did you come? I thought about the answer for a moment. Because after 10 years, I wanted to see my family again. My mother started crying quietly. My father looked at me with tired eyes. Then he said something that explained everything. Ethan, the truth is, we also needed your help. There it was. The real reason behind the phone call. I stayed calm. What kind of help? My father hesitated. Then he finally said the words. Daniel is in serious debt. My brother, the son they always believed would succeed. How serious? I asked. My father looked uncomfortable.